Hi there everyone, my name is Andrei Marius, and in this Envato Task Plus tutorial, I will help you get familiarized with brushes in Adobe Illustrator. I will break down the basics of the Paintbrush tool and the brushes panel, and show you how to create, manage, and work with different Illustrator brushes. Let's start with the brushes panel, the place where you will find brushes in Illustrator. To open this panel, you can go to Window and Brushes, or you can use the F5 keyboard shortcut. In this panel, you will find all 5 types of brushes that can be used in Illustrator. Calligraphic brushes and scatter brushes are displayed in a square thumbnail box, while art brushes, bristle brushes, and pattern brushes are displayed in a horizontal rectangle. Now, let's see what all these buttons do. Using this leftmost button, you can open other brush libraries on your computer, or you can save the brushes from your brushes panel. You'll learn more about these settings at the end of the tutorial, after you learn how to create your own brushes. Let's move to the next button, which can be used to easily open the libraries panel. These 4 buttons can be used to delete a brush from the brushes panel, to create a new brush, to adjust the settings of a brush that's already applied on a path, or to simply remove a brush applied on a path. All these commands can also be found in this drop-down menu. Besides those options, in this menu you can change the view of your brushes in the brushes panel. You can change what brushes to be shown in the brushes panel, or you can select the unused brushes to easily clean your brushes panel. Now that you know where to find brushes, let's see how you can use one. Select the Paintbrush tool from your toolbar, or use the B keyboard shortcut. Select a brush from the brushes panel, and then simply click and drag to create your paintbrush stroke. If you wish to apply a brush to an existing path, make sure that the path is selected, and then click the brush that you want to apply from the brushes panel. Let's remove this path and double-click the Paintbrush tool to open this window where you can check the settings that can be adjusted for this tool. When you move the fidelity slider all the way to the left, the path that you are drawing is more accurate to your input. If you are moving the slider all the way to the right, Illustrator adds a bit of smoothness to your drawn path. Get rid of these 2 paths and return to the Paintbrush tool options window. When you are checking this box, the path once created also gets a fill color. Let's change the fill color to red, and as you can see when you are drawing the path, once you finish creating it, you'll also get this red fill. If you want the path to remain selected once you finish drawing it, all you have to do is make sure that this keep selected box is checked. This third option will let you edit a path on top of a created path within the pixel range that you set with this slider. Let's say that you want to draw a line and you are not happy with this first attempt. All you have to do is draw a second one on top of the original one, and as you can see, once I release the button, this second attempt will replace the first one. Besides the settings from the Paintbrush tool options window, you can press the Shift key before you start drawing a path to easily create straight and oblique paths. Or you can press the Alt key after you started drawing a path to make sure that your path is closing after you release the mouse button. Now that you know where to find brushes and how to use them, let's learn more about the different types of brushes and how you can create your own brushes. Let's start with the Calligraphic Brush. To create a new brush, simply click this New Brush button. Make sure that the Calligraphic Brush box is checked, and then click OK to open this window where you will set the settings of your new brush. Let's type in a name for this new brush. Click OK, and your new brush will show up in the Brushes panel. Select the Paintbrush tool and your Calligraphic brush from the Brushes panel to draw a simple path. The color of a calligraphic brush depends on the stroke color that you choose to select. Let's change it to purple, and then double-click your brush to edit it and better understand all these settings. Make sure that you have this preview box checked to notice the changes while you are editing the settings of your brush. Lowering this roundness value, you can create a flatter brush, and using the angle and the size sliders, you can adjust the angle of rotation and the diameter of your brush. Once you are done, you can click OK, and all the changes will be applied where the brush is used. Double-click again your calligraphic brush, increase the roundness to 100%, and now let's see how the variables from these drop-down menus work. Most of these features are particularly useful if you are using a graphics tablet. Let's focus on the size settings to first exemplify this random variable. When the size is set to 10 and the variation is 5, the size range of the brush will go between 5 and 15. So when you are drawing paths using this brush, you will get random sizes varying between 5 and 15. The other 5 variables can only be used if you own a graphics tablet. Let's start with pressure and see how it works. With the same size values, the size range of the brush will go between 5 and 15 based on the pressure that you apply with the drawing stylus. As you can see, when I am pressing harder, the brush goes thicker, and when I ease the pressure, the brush goes thinner. Get back to your calligraphic brush and let's focus on the next variables. The stylus wheel variable is created to be used with an airbrush pen that has a stylus wheel. The brush size will vary based on the manipulation of the stylus wheel. With these other 3 variables, the brush size will vary based on the tilt, the bearing, or the rotation of the pen's tip. The second type of brush that you can create in Illustrator is the scatter brush. In order to create one, first you will need a shape or a group of shapes. Keep in mind that gradients and effects cannot be used when you are creating a scatter brush. For this tutorial, we will use this star shape. You can find a link in the description that will get you to the written version of the tutorial, where you can download the Illustrator document with this star. Select your star, click this new brush button, check the scatter brush box, and then click OK to open this window where you will set the settings of your new brush. Let's enter a name, click OK, and your new scatter brush will show up in the brushes panel. Select the Paintbrush tool from your toolbar to draw a simple path, and then double-click your scatter brush to better understand all these settings. Make sure that you have the preview enabled to notice all the changes as you make them. Using these sliders, you can set the size, spacing, scatter, and rotation of the brush elements. These values are always in relation to the original shape that you choose to use for your scatter brush. When you choose a random size, you can use these 2 sliders to specify a range within which the size of the brush elements should vary. As with the other brushes, you will need a graphics tablet to use one of these variations. From this drop-down menu, you can set the angle of rotation for the brush elements relative to page or relative to the path. Let's keep it relative to page. The color of a scatter brush depends on the stroke color that you choose to select and the colorization method that you set from this menu. Same rules apply for art brushes and pattern brushes. Let's focus on the colorization method and open this drop-down menu. When you select themes, black is replaced with the stroke color. Colors that are not black are replaced with tints of the stroke color, and white doesn't change. Selecting tints and shades will replace the existing colors with tints and shades of the stroke color. Black and white do not change. Selecting Hue Shift will replace the existing colors with the stroke color based on this key color. By default, the most present color from your brush is set to be the key color. To change this key color, just click this eyedropper icon and click the color that you want to be set as key from this preview. The sections from the brush that use the key color will be replaced with the stroke color, and the other colors are replaced with variation of the stroke color. Again, black and white do not change. For another explanation that might help you understand better how these colorization methods work, you can always click this tips button. Let's continue with the third type of brush that you can create in Illustrator, the art brush. As with the other brushes, remember that gradients and effects cannot be used when you are saving an art brush. Select this shape, which can be found in the Illustrator document from the written version of the tutorial. Click this new brush button, check the art brush box, and then click OK to open this window where you will be able to set the settings of your new brush. Let's change the name. Click OK, and your new art brush will show up in the brushes panel. Select the Paintbrush tool and your art brush to draw a simple path, and then double-click your art brush to better understand all these settings. Using this slider, you can increase or decrease the width of your brush relative to the original shape, and as with calligraphic brushes and scatter brushes, you can use this drop-down menu for the pen tablet variables. You can set the brush to scale according to the proportions of this original shape, or you can set it to stretch to fit the length of the path. This third option allows you to set a specific section of the brush that should stretch. Let's move this guide to the middle, and this section will stretch while this one will remain as it is in the original shape. Let's check stretch to fit, increase the width to 100%, and then focus on this next option. Using these arrow buttons, you can set the orientation of the brush in relation to the path. This blue arrow allows you to better understand how the brush is applied on the path. When it comes to colorization, the settings for art brushes are the same as the settings for scatter brushes. With these bottom options, you can easily flip your brush along the path or across the path, or you can fix this unwanted overlap using this button. Moving on, the fourth type of brush that you can create in Illustrator is the Bristle Brush. In order to create one, simply click this new brush button, check the Bristle Brush box, and then click OK to open this window where you will set the settings of your new brush. As with the other brushes, you can change the name. Click OK, and your new Bristle Brush will show up in the Brushes panel. Let's select the Paintbrush tool to draw a simple path using your Bristle Brush, and then double-click it to have a closer look at all these settings. From this drop-down menu, you can select the style of the brush tip. These options are pretty straightforward and give you endless possibilities to create any bristle brush that you may need. You can adjust the brush size, the length of the bristles, the density of the bristles, which is calculated based on the values that you set for the first two options, the thickness of the bristles, the opacity of the used paint, and the rigidness of the bristles. Let's click OK, and before we move on, you should know that the color of a bristle brush depends on the stroke color that you choose to select. The last type of brush that you can create in Illustrator is a pattern brush. As with the other brushes, gradients and effects cannot be used when you are saving a pattern brush. Select these shapes, which you can find in the Illustrator document, click this new brush button, check the pattern brush box, and then click OK to open this window where you will be able to set the settings of your new pattern brush. Type in a name, click OK, and as you can see, your new pattern brush will show up in the Brushes panel. Select the Paintbrush tool to draw a simple path using your pattern brush, and then double-click it to have a closer look at all these options. Make sure that you have the preview box checked, and let's focus on the scale settings. Using this slider, you can adjust the width of the brush relative to the original shape that you choose to use for your pattern brush. Let's bring it back to 100. And as with the other brushes, from this drop-down menu, you can access the tablet variables. You can add some space between the tiles that make up your pattern brush. You can flip your pattern brush along the path or across the path. And with these options, you are setting the behavior of the tiles that make up your pattern brush. Stretch to fit will stretch the tiles to fit the length of the entire path. Add space to fit will add space between the tiles, and the size of the tiles will not change, while approximate path will approximate the closest path that is needed to perfectly fit the tiles without affecting the size of the tiles. When it comes to colorization, the settings for pattern brushes are the same as the settings for art brushes and scatter brushes. Finally, using these tile buttons, you are setting the appearance for specific sections from a pattern brush. The main elements that you use to save your pattern brush are used for this side tile, and Illustrator generates for you tiles for the corners of a pattern brush. You can select them from this drop-down menu. For the start tile and the end tile, you have to create your own designs. Let's click OK and see how you can create your own tiles and how you can apply them to a pattern brush. Select these elements that you can find in the Illustrator document and simply drag them inside the swatches panel to save them as patterns. Get back to the brushes panel and double click your pattern brush. From the start tile, select new pattern swatch 1, and from the end tile, select new pattern swatch 2. Click OK to apply the changes. Let's delete this path, select the Paintbrush tool and draw some smooth arrows. Remember that you can always change the colorization to tints, and you can easily change the color of your arrow. In some cases, the corner tiles that Illustrator generates for your pattern brush might not look as you wish, and in this case you will have to create your own corner tiles. If you want to learn more about this topic, check out the link in the description, and I will show you how you can create your own corner tiles for this vintage pattern brush. Throughout this tutorial, I kept mentioning that you cannot use gradients for brushes, but keep in mind that you can use blends. You can create a blend that looks like a gradient and create a brush out of it. Feel free to check out the link in the description if you want to learn more about this technique and how it can help you to create this light bulb pattern brush. Now that you have your own set of brushes, you might want to save them to easily access them from another document. To save your brushes, all you have to do is click this button, go to Save Brushes, set a name for your set of brushes, and then click Save. To open your saved brushes, first let's create a new document. Click again this button from the Brushes panel, go to User Defined, and here you will find your set of brushes. You can select these brushes one by one to add them inside the Brushes panel, or you can select all brushes, open this flyout menu and go to Add to Brushes. In this same menu, you can access all the built-in brushes that come with Illustrator. When you find the brush that you want, simply select it and it will go inside the Brushes panel. And keep in mind that you can use these arrow icons to easily move to the next or the previous brush set. One more tip before we conclude this tutorial is that you can edit a certain instance of the brush without affecting the other strokes using this button. Make the change that you want Click OK, and as you can see, only the selected path gets the edit. With this final touch, your lesson is complete. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you in the next video.